Welcome to the core strengthening workout for David Evans. This video was made in the summer of 2012, and we were grateful guests of our friends who have a place in northern Italy in the Piedmont region. Absolutely spectacular place for cycling. If you ever have the chance to get there, I'd highly recommend it. I came to core strength late in my life. I am now almost 52. This was taken when I was right smack dab in the middle of being sort of 51. So about 6 months after I did Hawaii. And I've been doing core for, I would say, seriously for about 5 or 6 years. And I think it's a really typical thing to come to because when you're younger, for me, I was a single sport athlete. I was a runner for many years. And, to become better at running, all I did was run, essentially, which was probably very similar to a lot of other people. As you get older and as you branch out and realize that to maintain health and also competitiveness, you have to do a variety of things, and your body's asking you to. I have about 40,000 miles of running and about 100,000 miles of biking in me. So these kinds of core strengthening exercises almost became a necessity because my body was really asking for me to add the flexibility and strengthening that I was missing. And I was becoming imbalanced in a way and allowing myself to possibly get seriously injured. So when I got back involved in triathlon after a long hiatus, this was a natural because I just needed that extra strength. Doing an Ironman requires a tremendous amount of stamina, but it also requires a lot of strength, especially in the latter half of the race. And so I added these. What I'm doing right now is all stuff that I've picked up in a variety of different sources, magazine articles, and from other athletes, video clips that I've seen of what some athletes do. And it's a system that I sort of adapted to myself. You can see what I'm doing right here is I'm obviously keeping my hips up, maintaining one foot up for about 3 or 4 seconds at a time. And now I'm bringing my knee forward. Nothing's touching the ground except for my forearms. These kinds of exercises are really good for strength down the stretch. When you think about Hawaii, you think about what happens after the turnaround in the bike. That's when the race really begins. Everything up to that is sort of a preamble. And this kind of strength really helps in the last 3, 4, 5 hours of the race for athletes. And I've been doing this routine for about, half a decade quite seriously, and very seriously once I got back involved in triathlon. I think it was in 2010 when I began thinking about getting back involved. In 2011 is when I did South Africa and then Hawaii. When doing these exercises, you really want to focus on very slow breathing, very deep breathing, and especially on exhaling. So as you breathe out, that's the focus of the breathing cycle. Here, balance is important. Obviously, you're trying to keep your balance exactly on your side. You're trying to bring your leg up. I don't pretend to do these exercises as well as some people, but I just had my son film this since we were in such a beautiful environment and I had a little bit of time. I thought it'd be fun to add it to the blog. Here, body position in all of these is really key. You don't want to drop your hips in a lot of these exercises. Here, another example. I'm not doing quite the full routine as I normally would do, but I'm showing a little bit of a modified version just so you can see the different positions. Obviously, symmetry is important, so if you practice one side, you don't want to forget the other side. I think one of the reasons that core strengthening is so important is because we are mechanical, and when you add miles and miles and hours of training in your life, inevitably you're going to have some wear and tear. You may even build up some asymmetry. Core strengthening is a way of getting back the balance that your body really requires to be healthy and specifically to compete well. I think if you want to be a top-level athlete for many years, you have to be looking beyond the next race, the next victory. There's little Logan. This is a relatively informal video. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so notice the right angles there. The legs going up. Foot is supposed to be pointing towards the sky. This is really good for your hips. One thing we do know is that as you age, your hips become weaker. And hip replacement surgery is almost an epidemic. It's becoming increasingly common in people a little bit older than myself, but not necessarily. This is a great exercise to increase the abductors and adductor muscles of the hip and the pelvis, and therefore really critical. For example, in a bike crash, commonly these are the areas that are injured. The pelvis can be one of those areas, so keeping it really strong can help with that kind of thing. Your obliques are really important. Here's a diagonal stretch, really helping right here for good flexibility. Obviously great for swimming. Right here you can see the extension that you would want to have in freestyle, for example. And then punctuating the entire core workout is always a little bit of relaxation and getting your focus back. So every position should have a little bit of a comma to it. Here you want to make sure you wrap your shoulders underneath your back as much as possible, allowing your neck to be supported. You don't want to put too much stress on the cervical spine, which is the upper part of your spine. And this is a stretch that I do before I do the actual core stretch. This is an adaptation of yoga, obviously. And I've done a lot of yoga in my life. I don't do so much now, but I have adapted aspects of yoga and the kind of stretching and flexibility work that yoga induces to this strength workout that I do. So then the arms, upper arms are perpendicular to the body, and they're used as leverage. And now the pelvis, the hips come up, one plane for the upper body down to the knee, and then one leg is raised at a time, 3 to 5 seconds at a time. Obviously, you're maintaining your breathing, making sure that your neck is not having too much pressure put on it. And you're trying to have a good isometric contraction on the side of the body that's being raised. And the trick here is not to drop your hips. It's really easy to drop your hips. You want to make sure you have that strength. If you have to drop your hips, then obviously you don't have the strength. I think I really enjoy this workout because I find it adds another dimension to being fit. You know, swimming, biking, and running, obviously, if you do the Ironman, and especially if you do the Ironman well, you must be fairly accomplished, if not very accomplished, in those three sports. But what happens over time is, I think, that is the body becomes a little bit unhealthy because there is such an emphasis on those three sports. And even though it is a multi-sport approach and you aren't building up quite sort of the monolithic wear and tear that you might get from, say, just running, there is going to be wear and tear. And so you have to make sure you treat your body well. I've been, I would say, nationally, internationally competitive in sports for about 35 years now. And, you know, I've really tried to take care of my body. I think it's something that has to become a habit. It has to become a lifestyle. It can't just be something that you add on once you're injured and hoping to recover. It's got to be something that you do very intentionally as a matter of practice, as a matter of habit, day in, day out. I don't do the core strengthening workout every day, but I do it 2 to 3 times a week, especially when I'm training hard, because I find I absolutely need it. Here you can see the upper arms are reasonably perpendicular, and this is a really difficult one for me. I have a hard time keeping my pelvis and my whole body in a flat plane, and you know, it's hard to keep focused on breathing in a relaxed manner on this one, but this is a great core workout right here. It gets your quads, it gets your glutes, it gets all kinds of muscles in your body. And then here you'll notice I'm relaxing a little bit, getting my flexibility back, making sure that I'm staying relaxed so that I can focus on the next stretch. Got a yoga mat there on top of a piece of plywood. I do it in all kinds of different things. A little mat is a really easy thing to travel with, and you can find that you can always have a place to stretch and do some strengthening in your hotel room, for example, if that's the only possible place you can maintain your regimen. My students, I think a lot of you know that I teach math. My students are often impressed with my flexibility, and I just tell them that it's something I've worked on literally every day for at least 40 years. And I say if you work on it every day, not only do you maintain it, but you improve it, and flexibility says a lot about your overall health. And so I try and make sure that I stay flexible, and I work on those things. I work on my spinal flexibility every day, but I work on my overall flexibility on a regular basis. This pose, you want to have really good posture. You want to make sure you get a good spinal rotation, and you also want to make sure you do it on both sides. So always work for symmetry. Don't forget to do both sides. We all have asymmetries because of dominance on one side or the other. Maybe it's because we don't bilateral breathe in swimming as much. Maybe because we're right-handed and we serve with a tennis racket or, do those kinds of things disproportionately on one side. So you want to make sure that you really try and have symmetry, because triathlon is a purely symmetrical sport, and if we have a dominant side that's a legacy of some other activity or activities that we do, then we want to make sure that we really try and even it out. I like to do these. You have to be careful with your spine. I'm fortunate to have a fairly strong back, but you really need to make sure that you control the lower back right here and you don't bounce it. So notice as I come up, I'm trying to arrive at the same apex with my legs and my upper body at the same time. I'm breathing out on the way up. I'm getting a really good lower abdominal contraction, making sure that everything is relaxed, nothing is forced or jerky. And obviously I do other abdominal exercises as well, but this is a really good one. And sorry about the filming. I think I probably do 15 to 20 of these at a time. I don't go for, killing myself and making sure that I've completely reached my limit each time. I don't think that's the point, but I do go for a really good feeling of strength and a nice satisfied tiredness when I get done. And here I am. Looks like I'm doing my final pose right now. So those are the exercises, and I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been fun sharing this, and you can see Italy's absolutely gorgeous.